ready to really get better at negotiation. You all asked for a deep dive into Beyond Reason by Roger Fisher. And, well, this book is about way more than just signing contracts. It's about understanding the hidden things, like the emotions that can totally change how a deal goes.
Yeah, a lot of the usual negotiation strategies focus on logic and reason, but beyond reason kind of turns that on its head.
So you're saying it's not all about having the most logical argument, like I need to become an expert at reading people's emotions or something.
You could think about it like this. Logic will get you in the door, but it's emotions that really close the deal.
Okay.
Fisher makes a great comparison. He says that ignoring emotions in a negotiation is like trying to build a house without a foundation.
Oh, wow.
It might look good on paper, but eventually it's all going to fall apart.
Okay, I get it.
Hmm.
So how do we go about building that strong foundation?
Well, Beyond Reason introduces this idea of 5 core concerns, and these basically drive our emotions during negotiations: appreciation, affiliation, autonomy, status, and role.
5 core concerns. All right, I'm listening, I'm interested.
Okay.
But how do these actually work in a real negotiation?
Well, let's start with appreciation. Think back to a time when you felt like you were really understood and valued in a negotiation.
Okay.
It probably made a huge difference, right?
Yeah.
That's because when we feel appreciated, we're more open to working together.
That makes sense. When I feel like the other person is really listening to me and respecting what I have to say, I'm definitely more willing to work with them.
Exactly. And then the opposite is true, too. When we feel like we're not appreciated, we get defensive and we don't want to compromise as much.
So how do we actually show that appreciation without it seeming fake or insincere?
It's more than just saying thank you beyond reason. Give some really practical phrases.
Okay.
Like instead of saying good job, you could say, I appreciate all the effort you put into this. I can tell you really thought this through.
Okay.
It shows you're not just acknowledging the result, but that you see the effort and the thought process behind it.
That's a great tip. I can see how that little change in how you say something could make a big difference.
Now let's talk about affiliation. This is all about making real connections and building trust.
Okay.
It's this idea that we're more likely to work with people we like and feel a connection with.
So it's not just about the stuff we're negotiating, but the person sitting across from me.
Right. Beyond Reason actually shows this with a case study about a labor dispute that was really tense. At first, the two sides were totally against each other, but then they started having these problem-solving sessions together, and they even started doing social things together outside of the negotiations.
They actually hung out together outside of work?
Yeah, they did. And you know what happened? They got to know each other personally and started seeing each other as people, not just as opponents.
Wow.
This led to a breakthrough, and they were actually able to reach an agreement that worked for both of them.
That's amazing. I never would have thought that just hanging out could be such a powerful negotiation tactic.
It's not about being manipulative or anything. It's about finding common ground and building a good relationship.
Hmm.
The book says that when we put effort into building relationships, we create a much better environment for working together, which makes it way easier to tackle the tough issues.
Okay, so we've covered appreciation and affiliation.
Right.
What's next on our emotional checklist?
Autonomy, the need to feel like you're in control and that you have a choice in the matter,
Okay.
beyond reason, suggests that instead of giving orders, we should offer choices whenever we can.
So instead of saying, you need to do this, I should say, here are a couple of options. What do you think works best?
Exactly. There's a great example in the book where a manager, instead of just telling their team what the project plan was, presented them with different
Oh,
options.
that's interesting.
Not only did this give the team a feeling of ownership, but it also led to some more creative solutions because they felt empowered.
That makes a lot of sense. When I feel like I have a say in things, I'm definitely more invested in how things turn out. But doesn't offering choices make my negotiating position weaker?
Not necessarily. It's all about how you frame the choices.
Okay.
You're still guiding the negotiation towards what you want to achieve, but you're doing it in a way that respects the other person's need for autonomy. This can actually make your position stronger because it builds trust and encourages collaboration.
Okay, I'm starting to see how these core concerns can really change the game.
Yeah.
What about that fourth one? Status.
This is where things get really interesting. So status, it often gets overlooked in these negotiations, but it's a really powerful thing.
Yeah.
We all need to feel acknowledged and respected, especially at work.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I can relate to that when I feel like my expertise or experience isn't being recognized. It's hard to really stay focused and engaged.
Exactly. And Beyond Reason shows how just acknowledging status can be the key to a successful negotiation. There's this case study about a corporate merger that almost completely fell apart because the executives from the smaller company felt like their status was being diminished.
Yeah, I remember that one. It seemed like such a perfect match on paper,
Yeah.
you know?
Right.
But then things got really tense.
Right, but then as soon as the acquiring company made an effort to acknowledge the smaller company's expertise and contributions, the whole dynamic shifted.
Oh, wow.
They started holding meetings at the smaller company's headquarters. They made sure to introduce the executives with their proper titles, and they even asked for their input on important decisions.
And that's all it took. Just recognizing their status and things smoothed over. It seems too easy.
Well, it's not always easy, but it's really effective.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that everyone wants to feel important and respected. It's a basic human need.
So how do we handle those status differences without letting them ruin the negotiation? Seems like walking a tightrope.
It is. It really is.
Yeah.
It's about paying attention to the subtle cues and signals we give off.
Okay.
For instance, using someone's preferred title, really listening to their ideas and showing real respect for their experience,
Yeah.
those things can go a long way in making them feel valued.
That makes sense. It's not about putting someone on a pedestal or anything.
Right.
It's just about recognizing their worth and what they bring to the table.
Exactly. And when people feel that way, acknowledged and respected, they're much more open to compromise and working together.
Okay, so we've tackled appreciation, affiliation, autonomy, and status. What about the last core concern, role?
Role clarity is super important for a negotiation to be effective.
Okay.
When everyone knows what they're responsible for and where the boundaries are, it helps prevent confusion and builds a sense of working together towards a common goal.
So it's kind of like having a clear job description, but for negotiation.
You could think of it that way. Beyond Reason actually uses a really interesting example from international diplomacy.
Oh, wow.
By clearly defining the roles of each delegate involved, the negotiation process became much smoother, and it ultimately led to a better outcome.
I can see how that would be especially important in that kind of situation
Yeah.
with so many different people involved. Things could get really chaotic if you don't have clear roles and responsibilities.
Absolutely. And it's not just about preventing chaos either.
Okay.
When people understand their roles, they feel more confident and empowered to really contribute. It also helps manage expectations and prevent misunderstandings.
So to recap, we've explored all 5 core concerns.
Yeah.
But I'm guessing they don't exist separately, do they?
You're right. They're all interconnected.
Okay.
For example, just acknowledging someone's status can actually increase their feeling of autonomy. And on the other hand, if roles aren't clear, someone might feel unappreciated.
It sounds like a complicated web of emotions. So how do we keep track of all this and actually use these core concerns effectively when we're negotiating?
Well, that's where emotional intelligence comes in. It's about being aware of our own emotions, understanding what others are feeling, and then using that understanding to guide how we act.
Emotional intelligence, is that something you're either born with or not?
Not at all. Some people might naturally be more in tune with emotions, but Beyond Reason really emphasizes that emotional intelligence is a skill you can develop, and it starts with being self-aware.
Okay, so being aware of my own emotions,
Yeah.
what does that look like in a negotiation?
It's about recognizing your own triggers and patterns, you know? For example, do you tend to get defensive when someone challenges you?
Oh, yeah.
Or do you get impatient when things are moving slowly?
Oh, definitely. I get impatient, especially when I feel like the other side is just stalling.
That's a common one. The important thing is to recognize these patterns so you can manage them. Instead of letting your impatience take over, you can take a deep breath, remind yourself to stay calm, and focus on trying to see things from their perspective.
That makes a lot of sense. If I'm not aware of my own emotional triggers,
Yeah,
I'm just going to react without thinking instead of responding strategically.
exactly. Now, the other side of emotional intelligence is empathy, the ability to understand and share the feelings of others.
So putting myself in their shoes and trying to see things from their point of view.
Right, and it's more than just understanding their position. It's about recognizing the emotions that might be driving their behavior. Are they feeling threatened, disrespected, overlooked?
How can we actually do that in the middle of a negotiation, though? It's not like people are always going to show their emotions openly.
It takes active listening, asking open-ended questions, and really paying attention to those nonverbal cues.
Okay.
For example, if someone is talking really fast and their body language is closed off, they might be feeling anxious or defensive.
That's really insightful. It's almost like being an emotional detective.
In a way, it is.
Wow.
The more you understand what's driving the other person's emotions, the better you'll be able to address their concerns and build a more collaborative relationship.
Okay, I'm starting to see how all of this comes together. We need to be aware of our own emotions, understand the emotions of the person we're negotiating with, and then use that understanding to navigate those 5 core concerns. But let's be real, emotions can be messy.
Yeah.
What about those times when things get heated and it's tough to stay calm and rational?
That's where Beyond Reason gives us some really valuable strategies for managing those emotional flare-ups.
Okay, likewise.
One of the most effective things is to just take a step back.
Right.
When you feel those emotions rising, take a deep breath and try to detach yourself from the situation for a moment.
So instead of just reacting, I should hit the pause button. That's easier said than done, though.
It takes practice, but it's a crucial skill. When you detach yourself, you can look at the situation more objectively. Ask yourself, what's really happening here? What's triggering these emotions?
That's a good point. It's so easy to get caught up in the moment and lose sight of the bigger picture.
Exactly. Once you've figured out what's causing the emotional flare-up, you can address it directly. Maybe the other person feels like their status is being threatened or their autonomy is being undermined. By acknowledging their feelings and concerns, you can often calm the situation down.
It's like validating how they're feeling, even if you don't agree with where they're coming from.
Exactly. Just saying something like, I understand that you're feeling frustrated, can go a long way in easing the tension.
It's interesting how Beyond Reason changes the way we think about emotions in negotiation. It's not about ignoring them or pretending they don't exist.
Right.
It's about understanding them, both our own and the other person's, and using that understanding to get a better outcome.
And remember, you don't have to be some master negotiator or an emotional intelligence guru to apply these principles. Just start by being more aware of your own emotions and the emotions of the people you're interacting with. Ask questions, listen actively, and try to build those connections.
I'm definitely seeing negotiation in a whole new light. It's not just about getting what I want. It's about understanding what everyone needs, both logically and emotionally.
You got it. Beyond Reason really emphasizes that human connection is at the heart of effective negotiation.
So it's not just about winning or getting the best deal.
Right.
It's about finding solutions that work for everyone involved. And that takes empathy understanding and a willingness to see things from different perspectives. This is really hitting home for me. But I'm sure there's more to it, right?
Yeah.
How do I actually take all this and use it in a real negotiation? What are the practical steps?
Well, Beyond Reason also talks a lot about the importance of preparation.
All right, I'm ready to take all this and put it into practice. You mentioned preparation is key. So how do I actually get ready for a negotiation using these Beyond Reason strategies?
It's kind of like when you're building a house,
Right.
you wouldn't just start putting bricks together without a plan, right?
Right.
Same with negotiation. You need a solid plan.
Okay, so what does that plan look like?
Well, first, you got to be super clear on what you want to achieve.
Okay.
What are your goals? What are your absolute non-negotiables? And what are some areas where you're willing to be flexible?
Okay, so knowing what I want, that's the first step. But Beyond Reason is all about understanding the other side, too.
Exactly. You have to try and see things from their perspective. What are their goals likely to be? What might they be worried about or object to? The better you understand their point of view, the better you'll be at figuring out their next move and coming up with solutions that work for both of you.
And that's where those 5 core concerns come in.
Yeah, absolutely. Before you even step into the room, think about how you can address each of these needs for both yourself and the other person.
Okay.
How can you show appreciation, build affiliation, respect autonomy, acknowledge status, and make sure the roles are crystal clear?
So it's almost like having a checklist for each core concern.
Yeah.
What are some things I might put on that list?
Let's take appreciation, for example. Maybe you do some research on the other person's accomplishments or what they've contributed in the past and find some genuine ways to complement their expertise.
Okay.
For affiliation, think about if there are any shared interests or things you have in common that you can use to build rapport.
And for autonomy, I could come up with different options or choices I could offer that still get me what I want overall.
Exactly. For status, think about how you can acknowledge their position expertise or contributions.
Okay.
Even small things like using their preferred title or really listening when they're talking can make a big difference.
And for role clarity, I could suggest a clear division of responsibilities or who has the authority to make decisions right from the start to avoid any confusion later on.
You got it. By thinking through each core concern beforehand, you're not just going in blind. You're going in with a strategy to deal with the emotional side of the negotiation.
I like that, the emotional side.
Yeah.
But Beyond Reason also talks about creative problem solving, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Remember, it's not always about compromise. It's about expanding the pie, so to speak, and coming up with solutions that create more value for everyone.
That reminds me of something from Getting to, yes, that other book by Roger Fisher.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
One of the key points there is to focus on interests, not just positions, you know? By understanding the deeper needs and motivations behind each person's stance, you can often find creative solutions that meet those needs in ways you hadn't even thought of.
So instead of just fighting over our positions, we should try to dig deeper to find those underlying interests and then brainstorm solutions that address those needs.
Exactly. That's where the real magic happens when you move away from that win-lose mentality and towards a win-win approach. You open up a whole new world of possibilities.
This has been eye-opening. I'm already thinking about past negotiations and how I could have handled them differently using these principles.
That's great to hear.
Yeah, it is. So as we wrap up this deep dive into Beyond Reason, what's the one key takeaway you hope our listener will remember?
Emotions are not the enemy of negotiation. They're actually the key to unlocking its real power.
Hmm.
By understanding and addressing those 5 core concerns, we can change negotiation from a battle into a process of building relationships, understanding each other's needs, and finding creative solutions that work for everyone.
I love that. So to our listener out there, I have one final thought for you.
Yeah.
Think about a negotiation you were recently in.
Yeah.
How could using these Beyond Reason strategies have changed how it turned out? Did any of those core concerns play a role? What could you have done differently?
We really want to know what you think. Share your experiences with us on social media or shoot us an email.
And don't forget to join us for our future deep dives as we explore more of this fascinating world of negotiation and human interaction.